All right, so we're going to start with Unit 4. I'm going to share my screen with you. Right, so for this worksheet, we're going to be trying 2 new tasks, which are matching tasks. So what we're going to do is a matching information task. All right, so for matching information tasks, you need to locate an idea or piece of information in a text and match it to a phrase that actually describes it. Okay, so we're going to have a look at what that means and how to do these types of tasks. Okay, so we have this little extract from a passage about this animal, which is a meerkat. Okay, so let's have a look at this underlined section here. I'd like you to just read this underlined section, and then I want you to decide what type of information it is. So is it A, a description of the habitat? Habitat is the place where the animal lives naturally. Is it B, issues that cause something to happen? Or C, an argument for a type of action? Okay, so quickly read this underlined sentence and then choose A, B, or C and type it in the chat box. So what type of information is this? Okay, so if you just arrived, I'll say that again. I'd like you to just read this part of the sentence here that's underlined. And then I want you to look at the options A, B, and C. Type A, B, or C in the chat box for what type of information is this underlined section. So move if their food is in short supply or if they are forced out by a stronger gang. So we're talking about this animal, meerkats. So this sentence, is it a description of their habitat, where they live? Is it issues that cause something to happen, or is it an argument for a type of action? Please type A, B, or C in the chat box now. Okay, good, we have a few answers. Anyone else? Okay, we're just looking at this right here. So what is this? All right, so a few people have said B and some people say A. It's not a description of an animal's habitat. Their habitat is where they live. This is not, we're not looking at everything. We're just looking at this underlined section. So this is not describing where they live, what it looks like, or what the place that they live is like. What they are describing are issues, so problems that cause something to happen. What's the thing that is happening in this underlined section? What's the thing that's happening? Can you type in the chat box? What's the thing that is happening in this paragraph? So it talks about 2 issues that cause them to do what? 2 issues, so the short food supply is an issue, a problem. But the short food supply causes them to do what? Great, to move. Okay. So here's what is happening. And then we have 2 problems, short food supply or being forced out by a stronger gang. Gang means a stronger group of meerkats. Okay, so what we have to do sometimes is have a look at a sentence or part of a paragraph and decide what type of information it is. So let's have a look at this question here. It says, which paragraph contains the information? So we have paragraph A and we have paragraph B. Okay, so which paragraph contains information about two situations that force meerkats to change where they live? Please type in the chat box A or B. So which paragraph A or B contains this information? Okay, you should know straight away because that's a question that we just answered, which is B, okay? It tells us in this sentence. And then which paragraph has information about how meerkats generally spend their time? So quickly skim the whole thing, read both paragraphs, and then type A or B, which one tells us how they generally spend their time. Spend their time, meaning what they usually do with their day. So is it A or is it B? Okay, remember, I'd like everyone to answer, so please open up your chat box, type an answer, A or B. Okay, so the answer for this one is definitely A. So if we just skim from the beginning, it says here they devote a significant part of their day to foraging food. So straight away we know it's talking about what they spend their day doing. So often what we need to do for this type of task is they give you a list of information. You need to skim the passage to find what information the paragraph is in. Sorry, scan the passage. And then usually you need to match the information to the correct paragraph. Right, let's have a look at some other types of information that you might need to find. Okay, so these questions that we're going to look at now describe information that you might need to find for these tasks. So what we're going to do is match. Here are some little extracts from passages A to H. So we're going to match these A to H to the type of information that best describes them. Okay, so let's do it this way around. Let's have a look at the type of information first. So that's 1 to 8. So let's have a look at number 1. It says the findings of a study. I'd like you to quickly skim read all of these and then type in the chat box just for number 1. Which one of these A to H do you think is talking about a type of information? Sorry, is describing the findings of a study. So I'll give you 2 minutes to quickly skim read all of them and then type the letter in the chat box. So which of these describes the findings of the study? Remember, we looked at the word findings and this is the results. They do a study. What did they discover at the end? All right, take your time to read all of them just to make sure. and then type your answer in the chat box. All right, we're just going to do number 1 together. Right, so what you can do is quickly look for any synonyms of the word findings, and that may help you to choose your answer. So the correct answer, which some of you have got, well done, is F. So let's have a look at the words in F. A month later. Okay, so this is a month after they started the experiment. They were able to test it again, and the results showed significant change in the temperature. So they tell you that they were doing a study, they use the word results to show findings, and then they tell you what the results were. A few of you said C. So C says our study looked at the surrounding environment, while previous researchers have concentrated on diet. This doesn't tell you what the result is. It doesn't tell you what information they got at the end of their study. It just tells you what they are studying. Okay, so you may be looking for words like results. Okay, so it's not C. C is just describing what they are studying and what previous scientists did. It doesn't mention any kind of result, what happened at the end. Right, I'd like you to do the rest of them by yourself. So what you can do is kind of think about what we're looking for here. We're looking for a method. Here we're looking for a reaction, a description. Okay, so I'd like you to do 2 to 8 on your own. I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes. Just write your answers on a piece of paper and then we'll check them together. Okay, so just write the number and the letter that matches. All right, when you're done, please type done in the chat box. I'll give you 1 more minute. All right, seems like most of you are done, so let's go ahead and check. Please type your answer for number 2 in the chat box, just the letter. So a method. Whenever we think of a method, we're thinking of the step, like a process. They do one thing, then another thing, then another, in order to do their research study. Okay, great. So the correct answer here, D, is correct. So if we have a look at D, okay. So they achieve this, means they do the study by, and then they mention what they do. They weigh the animals before and after. Okay, number 3. So here we're looking for a reaction. When we talk about a reaction, we talk about what people think of something. So for example, if you're at home and you break something that was really important to your mother, what would her reaction be? Would she be angry with you? Would she say it's okay because it was an accident? So that is what we mean by a reaction. Something happens, how do people feel, or what do they do after that happened? So the correct answer here is G. Okay, if you didn't get it, let's have a look at G. So after 10 years, they gave up. So here's the reaction: the public grew angry. Number 4, a description of a habitat. If you don't know the word habitat, we've seen it a few times now, but write it down. It means the place where animals naturally live. So please write that word down if you don't know it yet. Okay, cool. Looks like most of you say E, which is correct. Have a look at E if you got it wrong. They describe the different conditions that they live in, where it is, the tropical rainforest. All right, number 5. So past and current studies, great. Everyone got C, which is correct. We know straight away that that's right because it says previous researchers. Number 6, how something works. So this will be describing some kind of process. If we've already used the letter, we don't use it again. So just if your answer is something we've already written down, then just have a look and see what you can change it to. Great, most people have said A, which is correct. So have a look at A if you didn't get it. That describes what they do. Number 7, a cause. So think about cause and effect. The cause is why something happens. So you only have 2 options left, B and H. So B is correct here. If we have a look at B, this phrase, thanks to, is talking about the cause. So water is warm thanks to the hot spring. So this is almost like because of or due to. So if you don't know that phrase, you can write it down. And the last one, 8, is obviously H, all right, because it's the only one left. And this was the easiest one, I think, because it gives us, and here, it takes, meaning the amount of time. Okay. All right, so this is the type of information that you're going to be looking for these matching information tasks. Things like findings, methods, reactions, descriptions, and so on. So you need to be able to quickly recognize what these types of information look like. So here's some other types of information that you may be asked to find for matching information questions. You may have to look for things like a number for how long something takes, a date, a measurement, a reason, a cause and effect, a conclusion, the problems, a finding, an account. So an account is a description of an event. If you don't know what this means, please write it down. Remember it. We may be looking for a reaction or a description of something. Okay, so as well as these, here's a list of some other things you may be asked to find. So now we're actually going to try one of these tasks, a matching information task. Before we do it, let's just practice some skim reading. So we have quite a long passage here. I'm going to give you about 2.5 or 3 minutes to read this passage. And then when you're finished, you need to just have a look at this multiple choice and decide what the main purpose of the passage is. Okay, so once you finish reading, have a look at A, B, C, and D and type your answer in the chat box. All right, you can start reading now. Remember, you're skim reading, so try and read quickly. I'll give you 2.5 minutes. All right, let's stop reading. That's 2.5 minutes. Okay, so I'd like you to quickly have a look at the multiple choice and type in the chat box A, B, C, or D. What's the main purpose? The main purpose means the main point. So why is the writer writing the passage? What is the main point that they're trying to tell you? So please have a look at these options and then type A, B, C, or D in the chat box. Take a guess if you're not sure. Remember, in listening and reading, it's always better to guess than to not write anything. Okay, so we have B and D so far. B says to explain the background to a proposed study into tropical animals. So the background here would be the history to it. I would say perhaps they mentioned that, but it's not the purpose. It's not the main point because they speak about many other things. D says to give the findings of new research into animals' behavior. So this is the correct answer, right? She mentioned some previous studies that were done that other researchers did, but mainly what she's doing is giving the findings of the research that they did on the geckos. Okay, it's also not a proposed study. Proposed would mean they haven't done it yet. Think about the word proposal, okay? They haven't actually done it yet. It's just a study that they are going to do in the future. So the main purpose here is to give the findings about the studies that they did into how geckos cope with wet feet. So this is their behavior, and the title gives us the behavior that they're looking into. Cope would be another word for manage. So if their feet are wet, how do they manage with that? Okay, so that's a very typical multiple choice question that you have to identify the main purpose. Right, but let's move on to the matching task. So as you can see, all the paragraphs have letters. So here we have a list of information that we need to scan for. And then you need to match the information to the paragraphs. So for each number 1 to 7, you have to match the correct paragraph, A to E. Okay. So first, let's have a look at what type of information we need to scan for. So number 1 is visual evidence. Number 2 is a question. This is yet to be answered. Does that mean the question has been answered or hasn't been answered? So has the question been answered? Yes or no? Type in the chat box. If I say is yet to be answered, has it been answered already? Yes or no? Yeah, not yet, right. So it's another way of saying a question that hasn't been answered. Okay, have a look at number 3. Please type in the chat box. Which word would you underline? For what type of information do we need to find for number 3? What word would you underline here for the type? Yeah, great, method, right? Number 4. What would we underline for number 4? Great, opinion or a researcher's opinion. Be careful, not the writer's opinion, but the researcher's opinion. So that's important. What about number 5? What are we looking for in number 5? Great, different environments. When it says a mention, it just means that they're spoken about. Number 6. Okay, good. The word contrast is important. So the difference between her work and others' work, but a contrast, meaning we're looking for some kind of difference. And number 7, great, a definition. Okay, so remember we looked at this yesterday. That could be something that's in the text or a footnote. There are no footnotes in this passage, so it's going to be a definition within the text. Okay, so it's important to understand what you're actually looking for. So let's look at question 1. It says, which of the following do you think is visual information? So we need to find visual information of the gecko's ability to resist water. So it's visual information, A, something the researchers believe, B, something they've seen, or C, something they've read about. Please type A, B, or C in the chat box. What does visual information mean? Yeah, definitely B, right? Visual, something we can see. Let's have a look at the rest of the question for number 1. So we had a look at what this means. Now let's have a look at what this means. So which of the following means the ability to resist water? Does it mean A, soak up water, B, sinks in water, or C, stops water getting in? What does resist water mean? Think about, I resist my temptation to eat a whole chocolate cake. Does that mean I'm going to eat it or I'm not going to eat it? Okay, so the correct answer here is C. So if you don't know what the word resist means, it means to stop yourself from doing something. So their ability to resist water means to stop water getting in. So we're looking for something that the researchers have seen that tells them how the geckos can stop water getting in their feet or on their feet. Okay, so this is exactly what we're looking for number 1. All right, so we're going to give the task a try. I'm going to share this information with the passage. All right, I know it's quite a lot to read on the same page, but this is as large as I can make it. So we have 7 questions here. Remember, again, you shouldn't be spending more than 2 minutes on a question. I'm not going to give that much time. Let's go for 9 minutes and we can see how you do in that time. So all that you need to do is read the visual information. Remember, don't read the whole passage in detail. You need to quickly scan to try and find which passage, which paragraph talks about visual information, and then you can just stop and read that passage in detail. Think about synonyms that you're looking for. We said that this is something that they've seen. So these are words that you might be looking for. Visual, something I saw. Any synonyms you can think of for the rest of the passage as well. Okay, so please practice using your scanning skills here. Right, so in your notebook, just write down the number and then the letter of the paragraph that matches. All right, you can go ahead and start now. Right, remember that if a question is taking you too long and you can't find the answer, just skip that question and move on to the next one. All right, when you're done, please type done in the chat box. All right, let's check the answers. Okay, please go ahead and type your answer for number 1 in the chat box. Trying to zoom in so we can all see. Okay, so just type the letter in the chat box where you found which paragraph with visual information. All right, anyone else? Okay, great. So D is correct. If you didn't get it, let's quickly have a look at D. It says here water repellent. Okay, so this is the ability to resist water. And let's see where they mention visual evidence. She says, who could see? So this word here tells us visual evidence. All right, number 2, the question that hasn't been answered yet. Anyone got the answer for number 2? Okay, quite a few of you said B. All right, maybe you said B because of the word yet, all right, but this is not a question. It just says yet the animals do not seem to have trouble getting grip. This is not a question. The correct answer here is E. So don't look for words that are in the question and try and match them to words that are in the passage. Remember, a lot of time things are paraphrased. So if you're just trying to match words, you may get the answer wrong. Let's have a look at E. And it says here, the team is keen to understand how long it takes geckos to recover. So if they're keen to understand, meaning they would like to or they want to understand something, it means they don't understand it yet. Okay, so this is, the question here would be, how long does it take geckos to recover from a drenching? So this phrase, they're keen to understand, means I would like to understand, therefore I don't understand yet. Right, number 3, a method. Type your answer in the chat box. Okay, great. C is correct. And this whole paragraph, they give the steps that they do. These words like first can help us. We know that they're starting to talk about steps and then they mention them. Number 4. So we had to scan for an opinion. Okay, remember there are only 6 paragraphs and 7 questions, which means for some answers we need to repeat paragraphs that we've already matched. So when we're looking for opinion, we're looking for words like I think, in my opinion, in my view, something like that. So C is correct again. And let's just scan for those words. So what is the phrase here that tells us that they're talking about opinion? Yeah, in my view is correct. For some reason, I can't find it now. Ah, over here. It's because it's small. Okay. So this is where scanning helps you. Instead of reading everything in detail, we just scan for some word that's going to express opinion. And that will enable you to answer the questions much faster. Okay, so number 5 is different environments. Okay, be careful, different environments where the geckos can be found. So this may be a mention of their habitat. Please type your answer in the chat box. Right, so some of you said B and A. B is talking about specifically the experiment and what they know about the geckos and in different environments. So they do mention environments here, but this sentence in A tells us where they're usually found. She says they appear to be equally happy scampering through tropical rainforest canopies and urban settings. So here are the two different environments. Remember, we need different environments where the geckos are found, so where they're happy. Whereas here, those tropical environments is just one environment, and also they're just talking about the study here. So A is correct. Number 6, we had to search for that contrast, so a difference in the research that they did. Right, please type your answer for number 6 in the chat box. So if we're talking about the difference of Stark's research and other workers, you may be having to look for things like words like previous research, and that may help you with the answer. So the answer here is B, which some of you got. Well done. So in B, she says explaining that previous studies, okay, so work of other researchers, had focused on the reptiles clinging to artificial surfaces. Okay, and this is the previous studies, which is different to what she's studying at the moment. And the last one, number 7, is the definition. So remember, this is a definition in the text of a scientific term. So here you can scan for a term, a scientific term that you're not likely to understand. So this is usually a long or complex word. So once you've scanned for that, you find one, see if there's an explanation usually after it. So what's the answer for number 7? Right, D is correct. So if you don't have that, let's have a look at D. So the scientific term is this here, superhydrophobic. Okay, straight away we know we probably don't know what this means. So as soon as you see a long, complicated word, you don't know what it means. This is usually a scientific term. And they don't expect you to understand that. So after that, they give you the explanation, which is water repellent. This phrase, i.e., basically means in other words. So they give you the term and then in other words, and then they give you an explanation of what the term means. So whenever you're looking for a definition, you can scan for something like this, i.e. It might not always be like this, but it could be. So if you see this, you know an explanation is following or a definition. All right, so well done, everyone. So that is a matching information task. We have our information. We need to scan the passage to try and find which paragraph it's located in. Okay, could be difficult. It's a task that you should practice more than once. All right, so we finished with worksheet 4. What we're going to do is move on to worksheet 5. We're going to be trying some more matching tasks. Right, so remember for reading, the passages get harder as you go on. So what we're going to have a look at now is discursive essays. So discursive meaning involving discussion. So this is what we call a discursive essay. And these can be a little bit harder than what we've been reading so far. So in a discursive essay, we often need to identify theories and opinions. So you don't know what a theory is, you can quickly write this down. So it's a formal statement of ideas that are suggested to explain something, like a fact, an event, or how something works. Okay. So a theory is not necessarily facts, okay? A theory is something that scientists put forward in order to try explain something. Then usually they do some sort of experiment or research to find out if their theory is correct. Or at the end of research, they might put a theory forward, and this would be the result or the conclusion of the research that they've just done. Okay. So it's an explanation of something. We're going to do another matching task. This is a matching feature. And we're also going to do a matching sentence ending task. Okay. Before we do that, let's have a look at these cohesive devices. So these are helpful for reading and also for writing. So when we finish, you can take a screenshot or something and use these words for your writing practice as well. So remember that the text reading paper, the passages gradually become more difficult, which means number 1 is easier than number 3. They may present contrasting points in an argument or explain a complex theory. Okay. All the reading passages contain cohesive devices, which are these. Okay. And we use these in order to connect our ideas together. All right. We also call them linking words. That's another word for them. So let's have a look at the cohesive devices in the box. And we're going to put them into the correct column for why a writer would use them. Would we use them to add a point or clarify? Clarify means to make the point clear, to show contrast, or present the opposite view, to give an example, or to draw a conclusion, introduce a result. So we're going to go through these together. Let's start with the first column. So quickly have a look at all these words, and I'd like you to type in the chat box the other words that I would add to this column. So words that we use to add more information or clarify a point. So these are words like moreover. So think of words that have a similar meaning to moreover and type them in the chat box. Okay, there's a few. You're looking for 5 words. So we have a point, we want to add more information on that point, or we want to make that point a little bit more clear. So what would we use? For adding more information on the same point, it's like adding similar information. So in addition is correct. Okay, similarly, because we're adding similar information on the same point. Furthermore, which has the same meaning as moreover. Right, can you find anything else? We have two more. Think about something else that would add similar information on the same point that you're talking about, or to clarify. So in fact, good, we often use this to make the point clear. We say something, then we say in fact. All right, there's one more. It's not thus. Can you see anything else? Not therefore. Okay, we can also use the word indeed in order to add more information. So indeed and in fact would have a similar meaning. All right, let's go to the next one, which is to show contrast. Please type your answers in the chat box. So here we spoke about adding similar information. Now we're talking about adding opposite information. So the most common one to use is although. So think about words with a similar meaning to this. Despite, in spite of, which has the same meaning as despite, we just use it differently. All right, we got some more, three more. Though is correct. Right? Some of the ones that you're saying are for conclusions, not for opposite opinions. We're looking for two more. Whilst is correct. So similar to using while. All right, one more. And nonetheless. Great. So all of these have similar meanings. So if you don't know what nonetheless means, it has the same meaning as although. We would just use it slightly differently. All right, the next one is to give examples. So this is really important, especially for writing. We always want to give examples after we've given reasons, examples for our answer. So for instance, is a great one to illustrate this. Illustrate is like a drawing. So imagine you're drawing a picture of something to explain it, such as, okay, that's it. And the last one, to draw conclusions. Okay, as a result, it's quite obvious because we want to introduce a result. Consequently, so the word consequently has the same meaning as a result. If you say consequently, then you're talking about the results. Therefore is the most common one. So some of you use this word for contrast. It's not for contrast. It's to introduce the result of something. Hence is correct. And one more. See which word is missing. There's only one more word left in the table that we haven't used. Great, and thus. So hence and thus have a very similar meaning. Okay, so quickly take a screenshot of this. It's something that you can use for your reading, your writing as well. When we go over writing, we'll see that one of the band score criteria is cohesive devices. So you need to be able to have a variety of these cohesive devices. But it's also useful for reading because you need to understand what these mean when you see them. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of time, take a screenshot, especially if you don't know these words and or if you don't know what they're used for. Okay, you can also find them in the course book that you can download. All right, so let's move on to a passage in which we're going to see these words used in the passage. Okay, so we have quite a long passage now. Remember, this is discursive, so they're going to be talking about opinions and theories. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just to skim read it. Okay, you can take notice of any of the words that we just looked at if you see any of them. But I'd like you to just skim read to get the general meaning. Here we have an illustration, we have a heading and a subheading. So remember to read these first, and I'll give you a bit of context, okay? So let's first have a look at the picture. Can you type in the chat box, what do you think this picture is of? Just read the heading and the subheading, and it should tell you what you can see in the picture. So what can we see in this little illustration? It doesn't have a caption, so we should be able to tell from the heading and the subheading, what is this of? Somebody said crow. Okay, that's good, close. But it's probably a rook. Okay, a rook is a member of the crow family. It says the new research indicates that rooks. So it's probably not a crow, but a rook, because this is what they're using in the new research. Okay, so please don't forget about this heading and subheading. You want to read this to get a bit of context so that when you start reading, you know, you have an idea of what you're reading about. So we know that we're going to be reading about some new research that's done on rooks. And then they're going to be talking about their ability to solve complex problems using tools. We can see that there's something in its beak, okay? So we straight away know, we have an idea of what the research is about before we even start reading. All right, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, so please start skim reading now. Just think about what it says that matches the context that we just looked at. All right, let's stop reading. So that's 3 minutes. If you find it difficult to read the text quickly, that's something that you need to improve. Maybe you can do that just through practice. All right, so let's have a look at a new task, which is matching sentence endings. So for matching sentence endings, you have in the question the beginning of sentences. Here we have the beginning of 6 sentences. We need to complete the sentences by choosing the correct sentence ending from the options in the box. Okay. So as you can see, we have more options, 2 extra options than there are sentences. So be aware that 2 of these you don't match. So this is how we should do matching sentence endings. The first thing we should do is read the sentence beginnings, okay? And scan the passage to locate information in the sentence beginnings. So we can start by having a look at them and underlining any important words. Here would be a new study. So we can't match them without reading the story. So what we should do is scan the passage to find the information in the sentence beginning. So we scan the passage for number 1 to find the passage or the part of the passage that contains information about a new study. Okay, so we scan, we find new studies, and then we stop and read that part of the passage in detail. Okay, so you don't read the whole passage in detail, just the relevant part, okay, that contains information about the new study. Once we've read that, then we can choose the best sentence ending. Okay, so which sentence ending matches? Remember that you may not see these words in the passage, but you might see a paraphrase of these words. Grammar is also really important for these types of sentences, and you can use grammar to check if your sentences are correct. So once you've matched a sentence, if you read it and the grammar is incorrect, it means that that's not the correct answer. You can't do this task just by using grammar and not reading the passage. So you read it first and you use grammar to check. Okay, if the noun doesn't match the verb, if the tense of the sentences don't match, you know that this is not right and you need to choose a different answer. Okay, so once you're finished matching them, use your knowledge of grammar to check if your sentences are correct. All right, so let's have a look at the passage and the questions on the same page. Okay, so remember what you should do is just have a look first at what you need to find. For example, new study. Look for a mention of the intelligence of birds suggested in the stories. So here you'll be scanning for either the word intelligence or some paraphrase of this word. Okay, so again, think about the keywords, scan the passage, read that part in detail, and then choose the sentence ending. Okay, so we have 6 questions, so I'll give you about 8 or 9 minutes, and then we'll check the answers together. So just write the number, match it to the correct letter. Remember, use grammar to check if the sentences are correct, if they make sense. Okay, you can start the task now. Right, most of these questions are in the same order as the passage. So you should be finding the answer to number 1 near the beginning and the answer to 5 and 6 near the end. Okay, so don't scan the whole passage just to look for the answer for number 1. You should be reading near the beginning. Right, if you're done, please type done in the chat box. If you are finished, you can quickly check your answers. See that the grammar is correct. If it's not, you may need to change your answer. All right, let's stop there. That's about 10 minutes. There should be enough time. Remember, if something's taking you too long, don't spend more than 2 minutes on a question. All right, so the first thing that we should do, underline the keywords and then scan the passage. Okay, so we're looking for a mention of a new study. So if we scan paragraph, the first paragraph, we can see it says here a recent study. Okay, so we know that our answer for number 1 is here. So we read this in detail and then try and match the sentence. So please type in the chat box which sentence ending matches with number 1. If you're not sure, then quickly read over here again. Remember that whatever answer you choose will probably be a paraphrase of the information in the text as well. So you need to read this and see which of these sentences match the information here. So quite a few of you have said E. So if we have a look at E, it says helps us to understand a mysterious event. If it says mysterious event, that means over here there must be some kind of paraphrase for the word mysterious event. So it says it demonstrates that rooks belonging to the crow family are in fact able to solve problems using tools and can easily master the same technique used in the story. It does mention the word story, but it doesn't talk about a mysterious event. It doesn't say that it's mysterious. So therefore, E is not correct. So whatever you choose, you need to be able to find paraphrases of those words in the story. If you can't find the paraphrase, that means it's not the correct answer. So the correct answer here is D. So we have a look at D. It said confirmed a fictional account. So the paraphrase that we're looking for here is story. Okay. And it's confirmed it because it showed that they are in fact able to solve the problems using the same technique as the story. Okay. But again, I want to stress the fact that you need to match the words in the sentences to the words in the story. Okay. If you can't find a paraphrase of this word, it means it's not the correct answer. But here, our paraphrase is story, so it's correct. Okay, let's go to number 2. So we're looking for the word intelligence or paraphrase. So we can scan the word intelligence is here and here. So our answer must be somewhere around this. So please type your answer for number 2 in the chat box. If you don't have it, quickly read this part of the passage in detail to try and find your answer. Remember, but is used for contrast. So the opposite idea is going to come after. Anyone else have an answer? All right, F is correct. So let's have a look at F. It says only scientific studies can prove this. So only scientific studies can prove the intelligence of birds. So it says here, although it can be speculated, meaning guessed in folklore, the stories, they need empirical tests. So this word test is a paraphrase for scientific studies, okay? The tests are needed to examine the extent of their problems. And here the word are needed is some kind of paraphrase of can prove this. Okay, so again, they're not exactly the same words, but they're paraphrases. Number 3. So first we look for some information about half the birds. So if we carry on reading, we can see here it says 2 of the birds and then the other 2. So our answer must be somewhere around that. If you don't have the answer, then quickly read this section, see which of these matches. If you've used an answer, we're not going to use it again. So the correct answer is A. Others needed several attempts. If we look for some paraphrases, okay, the other birds needed a second try, several attempts. Okay, number 4, we're looking at the advantage of using big stones. So first we can find those paraphrases. Okay, and we see here larger stones, we have a paraphrase. So our answer is somewhere around there. Please type your answer for number 4. If you haven't found it already, read this section. All right, so C is correct. Well done. So in C, it says achieve their goals sooner. Okay, and here we have they would obtain their reward more quickly. So this is the paraphrase. All right, let's go on to number 5. So we have a mention of tools here, using tools with ease. So if we scan for the word tools, we can see it here and here. So our answer must be somewhere around there. All right, so please type the answer for number 5. If you don't have it, quickly read this section. It again mentions the word tools, so our answer must be somewhere over here. And B is correct. So let's quickly have a look at B if you didn't get it right. So they said they don't do this in their natural habitat. And over here we can say that they said they are not believed to use tools in the wild. So the word wild is a paraphrase of natural habitat. Okay, last one, there's a mention of different materials. So we can scan for these different materials. And here we can see they talk about water and sawdust, different materials. So what's the answer for number 6? If you haven't found it, read in this section. Again, here there's the same materials mentioned, water, sawdust. So our answer must be somewhere over here. Remember, your grammar needs to make sense. Again, I said look for paraphrases, right? Some E, there's no mention of mysterious events. G, there's no mention of protecting themselves. So these cannot be the correct answer. Anyone else? Just quickly read this sentence. Look at what we've got left. We've used B, we've used C. So you only have 3 options. Which one of them matches the information here? So the answer is G. It says they consequently rejected one type over another. So they're talking about the result. And if we have a look, it said they had the 2 materials, water and sawdust. The rooks dropped the pebbles into the tube containing water and not the sawdust. So and not means they rejected one particular type. And the type that they rejected was the sawdust. Okay, so please remember, if the information is not matching, if there's no paraphrases, it means it's not right. So the sentence endings contain paraphrases of the information in the stories. And we use the keywords in the question to scan and find the part of the passage that contains the answer. Okay, we're going to take a break. Not that long today, just until 9:45. Okay, so about 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and carry on. Okay, we have a lot to do today, so we can't take a long break. All right, so I'll see you at 9:45. All right, so there's one more matching task that we're going to try, which is called matching features task. So this is different from the ones that we've been doing so far. So for this type of task, you'll get in passages that contain theories or comments about different people, places, years, or things. So for these tasks, the different options are listed in a box, and you need to match them to the questions. Remember that the sentences paraphrase the information in the passage. Okay, the sentences and the questions, like what we just did. For the last task that we did, the matching sentence endings, the questions were in the same order as the text. But for these, the questions will not be in the same order. Okay, so for some of these questions, you may need to match a person to a study or an action, or you may need to match them to a theory or an opinion. So let's have a look at what that looks like. All right, so you have a list of options in a box. In this case, we have a list of 3 different researchers. And then we have a list of statements that we need to match the researchers to. So these statements will either be a theory that the researcher has, or an opinion that the researcher has, or we may have to match them to an action or a study that they did. Okay, so this is what is going to be in these statements. Okay, it may be an opinion, it may be an action, it may be a study, and then we need to match them to the correct researcher. So let's have a look at the question and the passage together. So the first thing you can do before you start reading is to just scan the passage. Before you start doing the questions, is to scan the passage for the names or the words in the box. In this case, the names of the researchers. So I'll give you 1 minute. I want you to scan read. So just read it as quickly as possible and look for the words Pagel, Lieberman, and Gray. Okay, so you're not skim reading to get a general understanding. You're just scanning for these specific words. Okay, so I'll give you 1 minute. Try find all of their names. They may appear more than once. Okay, so you should be finished scanning now. So let's see where they mention these 3 researchers' names. So first, let's have a look for Pagel. We can see it over here. Right here, we find the name Lieberman. Again, we have the word Pagel. Here we have Pagel again. Pagel. And here we have Gray. Okay, so these sections of the paragraphs will contain information about these researchers. Okay, so you'll look for paraphrases of the words in the sentence and then see which researcher it matches to. Often the ones with the researchers' names are the places that you need to read in more detail. Let's have a look at this over here. Here we have the pronoun he. Who does this he refer to? Please type in the chat box. Who are they talking about when they say he over here? Yep, they're talking about Gray. Okay, so please also have a look for any pronouns. So here, this is probably going to mention, sorry, this is going to link to whoever was mentioned before. Okay, so any information here would also match to Gray. Okay, so now you know where the information about the researchers are, so you can have a look by looking at sentence 1, reading the information. Okay, think about any keywords. So you can scan the passage for any of these keywords like other cultures and then stop and read that information in detail. And wherever this information is, look for what name is close by, and that will be which researcher matches. Right, so you have 5 questions. I'll give you about 7 or 8 minutes and then we'll check the answers together. Okay, so for each question, 1 to 5, you just need to write A, B, or C. All right, if you're done, please type done in the chat box. All right, so that's over 9 minutes, so that should be enough time. Let's have a look at the answer. So I've underlined some keywords here. So this is what you can use to help you scan to find matching information and then read that in detail to find the answers. All right, so you just need to type A, B, or C in the chat box. So which researcher matches number 1? So we're looking for some information that talks about people in other cultures and recognizing certain words. Okay, great. A is correct, so that's Pagel. If you didn't get the answer, let's have a look over here. And he says why we can instinctively recognize words in other Indo-European languages just from their sounds. So here, people in other cultures would be Indo-European and recognize certain sounds. Here we have recognize and the word sounds as well. Number 2, we've got to find some information about words changing over time and the rules that they might have. Okay, so C, gray, is correct. And we got our information at the bottom here. They said, despite all the variances and contingencies in human history, so this matches with regardless of what happens in the world, okay, there appear to be, it seems that there are remarkable regularities. So this here is a paraphrase for fixed rules in the process of language change. And this here talks about words altering over time. So again, you really need to look for paraphrases. Number 3, So we're looking for something about words not following, words that don't follow a pattern, and what happens if they're used often. Right, so B is correct. Lieberman, let's quickly have a look for those who didn't get the answer. So he says, in other words, they found that the more an irregular verb is used, the longer it will remain irregular. So irregular, meaning words that don't follow a pattern. Number 4. So keywords we can look for is similar sound, many years, many countries. So you can quickly scan for any passage that talks about sound. Okay, we can see some mention of sound here. Duo, duo, duex, dos. Okay, these are sounds. They're words, but they're looking at sounds of words. And then it talks about many years. Okay, an 8,000-year history, many countries, Indo-European language speakers. And then here it gives us our answer, and used a related sound to communicate the idea of two. All right, so A is correct here. And the last one, we're looking at historical changes in one particular language. So which researcher looked at historical changes in one particular language? So this key here is one particular language. Please type your answers in the chat box. A couple of you have said A, Pagel, but what we've looked at is that in this sentence, he talks about Indo-European speakers. This is not one language, this is many languages. And again, he spoke about Indo-European languages. So in both of these paragraphs, he's speaking about a group of many different languages. Definitely not one particular language. So if you chose A, I want you to find what the correct answer is. So it's not Pagel because he focuses on many different languages. Now some of you have said C, Gray. So if we have a look at Gray, he's a language expert from the university, and then they mention that he says despite all the variances, there are remarkable regularities in language change. Is he mentioning one particular language? No, we don't actually know which languages he used in his studies. He's just remarking on the studies of these two people. So it doesn't mention anything about Gray and what studies he did. He's just making a comment. So it can't be Gray. So the answer has to be B. If it says one particular language, you really need to find which researcher only mentions one language. For Gray, we don't know. He doesn't mention any languages. We can see that Pagel is mentioning more than one language. Indo-European is not a language. It's a group of many languages. So let's have a look at the paragraph about Lieberman. Which is the one particular language that he studies? So please tell me in the chat box, what is the one particular language that he looks at? It's English, right? And then it says a historical changes. So he's mentioning the verbs that they took from Old English. Old English is the historical change. And then he says that 98 of them remain regular today. So this is the historical changes, and the one particular language that he's looking at is English. So whenever it says something like this, be really careful. This can give you an easy clue. You know, you need to look for one language. So if it mentions two, that obviously cannot be the answer. Okay, so again, paraphrase here is important, and you should use your scanning skills to help you find the names of the researchers. Okay, so that's all for matching tasks. We're going to move on to multiple choice. And with IELTS reading, there are a few different kinds of multiple choice. So we're going to look at the different kinds of multiple choice, and also we're going to look at identifying the writer's purpose. So we looked at one of these questions already. Their purpose is the reason that they're writing. So you're looking at the main points here. Okay. So usually with multiple choice questions, to answer, you need to read 2 or more connected sentences or several connected sentences. So often they're not scanning for specific information, but looking at the main idea. All right, so you have a short passage here. I'd like you to skim read it, and then we're going to answer this question. So this question is focusing on what different views do the linguists have. All right, so first skim read it. You can take 30 seconds. And then I want you to read the question and then choose the correct answer, A, B, or C. Okay, so this is discussing linguists. We need to see what they have different views on. So in order to find this, you can think about what paraphrases could they use for different views. They might use words like disagree, argument, or something like that. So you need to look for some paraphrases of this word. Okay, so please go ahead and skim read this. I'll time you. You've got 30 seconds, and then you can answer the question. All right, so you should be finished reading now. So have a look at the question, read the different options, and then read it in a bit more detail to find out what the different views are. All right, so I'd like you to type the answer in the chat box, A, B, C, or D. Take a guess if you're not sure. Remember, it's better to just write down something. Right, we can go through them one by one. So let's have a look at D. It says when early humans developed ability to read and write. All right, there's no mention of early humans, so straight away this is not correct. Animals are intelligent enough to learn how to read. They don't talk about whether they're intelligent enough or not. Okay, they're just talking about the fact that monkeys can recognize letters. And then B, our ability to read words is linked to our writing ability. Let's see, is there any mention of writing ability? They say written words, but they're not talking about writing. They're still talking about reading, our ability to recognize them. So there's also no mention of writing ability. So if you're not sure, you should just go through and ask yourself, do they actually talk about these points? Is there actually any mention of early humans? If not, obviously this answer is incorrect. So C is correct when the language ability begins to affect reading ability. Which word in this passage is a synonym for different views? So this will help you get your answer. So please type in the chat box, which word here is a synonym for different views? Well, not a synonym, but a paraphrase. So it doesn't have exactly the same meaning, but we use it to have a similar meaning. Great, the word debate. And if you knew that, then you would have been able to get the answer. But at which stage language becomes necessary has come under debate. So when, at what stage, the language begins to affect reading. Okay, so they agree that language is needed to read, but at which stage it's needed or how necessary it is, they're not sure. So you can do this as a trial and error. If you're not sure, just cancel out the ones that you know are definitely incorrect, and that'll help you decide which is the correct answer. Okay, so you may be asked what people agree or disagree on. Now let's have a look at some other multiple choice questions. Right, so some other questions, you may be asked to choose 2 correct answers from 5 options. So here you're not just choosing one option, but you're choosing 2. All right, so before we look at the question, let's quickly skim read. So I'll give you 45 seconds, just skim read the passage to find out what it's about. Oh, okay, sorry, that's more than 45 seconds, so you can stop reading. All right, so the next thing you can do is to have a look at the question and see what information do you need to find. So in the question it says we need to find 2 possible issues that may have caused the rise in dolphin numbers. So before you look at the options, I want you to quickly scan the passage again and tell me which paragraph, 1, 2, 3, or maybe there's more than one. So which paragraph mentions possible issues that cause the rise in dolphin numbers? So remember, you're looking for 2 issues. So scan and then type the number of the paragraph in the chat box that mentions these issues. Okay, so a lot of you are saying 2, which is correct. We just have a look at the word firstly here. We know there's 2 issues, so firstly gives us a clue. This is the first issue. And then we also have a look here that something else was going on. So this may be an introduction to the second issue. Okay, so now you don't need to start from the beginning again. You're just going to find your answers here. You may have to read a little bit further to get some more information about the second point. All right, so you can read this again in detail, have a look at the options, and I'll give you 2 minutes, then type your answer in the chat box. So which 2 issues caused the rise in dolphin numbers? Okay, when you have the answer, please type it in the chat box. All right, so that's 2 minutes. You should have an answer, so please type your answer in the chat box. Take a guess if you're not sure. All right, so everyone said B so far, which is correct. So it tells us here that when she loses her calf, she can give birth again much sooner. Okay, so this matches with the answer for B. Then we know that the second thing is something that is distinctively human, right? So we have to find which of these options have something to do with humans. So we know that that can't be A, so it must be one of these options. So the correct option, the next option is E. It says dolphins had less contact with humans after the hurricane. Some of you said B and C. So C says that they had a greater number of fish and shrimp. Now we don't really know that. It does mention shrimp, but it doesn't tell us that they had a greater number of shrimp. Also, it said that a decrease, it means there were less dolphins being caught for food or sport. Again, it doesn't mention them being caught for food or sport. All that it says here is that dolphins may have been able to spend more time eating and less time traveling or diving to avoid any boats. Okay, so it means they had less contact with the humans after the hurricane. It says more time eating, but it doesn't say what they eat. Okay, and it doesn't mention anything about them being caught for food or sport. All right, well done. So let's move on to another kind of multiple choice question. So these are ones that focus on the writer's purpose. We're going to have a look at two different types of questions. One that asks about the writer's purpose and one that asks about the writer's opinion. So in some multiple choice questions, you may be asked to consider the writer's aim or purpose. So the aim is the reason why they're writing. So this focuses on the main idea. So here we have a short passage. I want you to quickly just skim read it. I'll give you 30 seconds to get the main points. You don't have to answer any questions, just read it quickly. All right, so you should be finished reading. So for these types of questions where they ask you about the writer's purpose or the writer's opinion, you often need to consider the writer's tone or attitude. Remember, the tone of writing expresses the writer's attitude towards the subject or reader. Okay, so their attitude, what is the mood of the writing? Is it positive? Is it negative? What do they think about what they're writing about? So in order to understand the attitude or tone, we can have a look at some words that they use in the passage. So let's have a look at these 4 words: blockbuster, 3 words: blockbuster, hopelessly flawed, and revel in. So I'd like you to quickly scan, find these words in the passage, and then decide if you think these are positive or if these words have a negative tone. Even if you're not sure what the words mean, you should still be able to tell whether they sound positive or negative. So let's have a look. Here we have the word blockbuster, hopelessly flawed, and revel in. So I'll give you some time. Read the sentence that these words are in and decide if they're positive or negative. All right, so let's have a look at the word blockbuster. Do you think this is positive or negative? Please type your answer in the chat box. Okay, if you're not sure, we can have a look at before, and this gives us a clue. So this is a positive word. A blockbuster film is a film that was really popular. What about this word over here, this phrase, hopelessly flawed? This gives us a clue as to whether it's positive or negative. Yep, this one is negative. So it's criticizing the film. And the last one, revel in. This is a phrasal verb. If we revel in something, it means that we really enjoy it. So this is a positive word. So it says they revel in the return of the dinosaurs. This phrase over here is talking about the film. So if they say that they revel in it, they revel in the film, it means they really enjoy watching the film. Okay. So you can see that he says positive and negative things about the film. So we need to decide now what his main purpose is and what his opinion is. Okay, so here you have two questions. So you can read the text, the passage again. And for each of these options, these questions, I want you to choose A, B, C, or D. Okay, so think about the words that we just looked at and use that to help you answer the questions. All right, so I'll give you 3 or 4 minutes. You can start now. So read the question, read the options, and then read the passage again. Remember, his purpose is the reason why he's writing. His opinion is focusing on his attitude. All right, let's stop. I'd like you to type your answer in the chat box. So what is your answer for number 1? I'd like everyone to answer. Take a guess if you're not sure. It's just a short passage. Okay, I only have 4 answers. What about everyone else? All right, let's have a look at A first. So it says to suggest that scientists should look to science fiction for inspiration. There's no mention of this in the passage. They're not mentioning what scientists should do. He's just talking about a movie. So it can't be A, right? Let's have a look at D. D says to demonstrate that scientific research can provide a source of entertainment. But the question is, did they do scientific research? Because he says here, even though the actual methodology is hopelessly flawed, it was science-ish enough. So this tells you that they didn't actually do much scientific research. So what they're saying here is the opposite of this. Okay. The correct answer here is B. And we get our answer from looking over here. So it says to argue that people choose to believe the improbable. So the improbable means things that are unlikely. They choose to believe things that are unlikely, so not real or not fact, not likely to happen, in order to be entertained. So they choose to believe what is not likely so that they can be entertained. And it says here, to let us suspend our disbelief. So to choose to believe in what's not true and revel in. So I told you that revel in means to enjoy. So to suspend our disbelief so that we can revel in the film. So this here matches the information. If you didn't understand what some of these words meant, you could still go through the other answers and decide whether they're right or wrong. So we know that there's no mention of what scientists should do, and the opposite of D is true. Let's have a look at number 2. Please type your answer in the chat box. Again, I'd like everyone to answer. Even if you get it wrong, I can explain to you why. But if you don't type anything, then obviously you won't stand a chance of getting it right. Hey, anyone else? All right, so far everyone said C. So C is correct. So in spite, so even though there were inaccuracies, the film was, it was still a successful film and novel. So we can go back to this part here. So it tells us that the methodology was hopelessly flawed. Okay, so there were inaccuracies, it wasn't all correct. But even though this happened, they still reveled in the film, they still enjoyed it. And also it tells us at the top that Jurassic Park was a successful book and a blockbuster film. Okay, if we have a look at A, right, this is not true. A rendition means it was like a good copy of the original book. And again, B and D are incorrect because the opposite is true. So we know that there is no thorough research done because it's hopelessly flawed. So this can't be correct. And if we have a look at D, it says it is a good example of the importance of scientific fact. Well, we know this is not true because there's not a lot of scientific facts. Also, it doesn't really mention anything about the novels. It's mostly talking about the film. Okay. But also, it's not good scientific fact because it's hopelessly flawed. So if you're not sure about the answer, just go through each option and decide whether this actually matches the information in the text or not. If it doesn't match, then you have to look for another answer. All right, so these are some typical multiple choice questions: writer's purpose and writer's opinion. So if you find those difficult, you may need to do some more work on them. All right, we're going to move on to the last worksheet. Worksheet 7, and we're going to be practicing some tasks to do with the third reading passage. So this one may be a little bit harder. So we had a look at discursive texts, which are a discussion. Now we're going to have a look at argumentative texts. So in these kinds of texts, the writers often give their opinion and attitude. We may also need to look at the writer's claims or views. So a claim is when we say that something is true or a fact, although you cannot prove it or other people might not believe it. So if I make a claim, I think it's true, I'm telling you it's a fact, but I might not actually be able to prove it to you. Okay, so it's like a fact that's not a real fact. We're also going to look at these two types of tasks: a summary completion task and yes, no, not given. So let's have a look at argumentative texts. It says that these are the most difficult and complex texts, and these are in the reading sections 3. Okay, they may feature arguments for or against a specific theory. So if you're for it, it means you agree with it. If you're against it, it means you disagree. And they may present a discussion of different arguments. Okay. It is important to be aware of the writer's overall tone. So that's what we just looked at, their attitude. And one way we can tell their attitude is by looking at the words, like we looked at the word blockbuster and the word hopelessly flawed. And this gives us a clue as to what their attitude is. So their choice of words indicates their attitude towards the topic. So here we have a list of words. We're not going to do all of them. We're just going to have a look at a few. And we're going to decide whether they have a positive or a negative tone. So let's have a look at the word unspoiled. I'd like you to type positive or negative. What do you think is the tone of the word unspoiled? If I say it's an unspoiled landscape, is this positive or is it negative? Yep, this is a positive word. It means it hasn't been spoiled by anything. What about the word biased? So somebody is working for Coca-Cola and they write an article about Coca-Cola saying how good it is. That may be a biased review. So biased is negative. It means they're only looking at one side of the story, or they only support one side of the story. All right, let's have a look at the word sophisticated, positive or negative. You could look at somebody in a very good suit, maybe they're an executive of a company, and you might say, oh, they look sophisticated. So this is positive. Okay, let's look at 2 more. What about the word monotonous, positive or negative? Sometimes we could say, oh, she's got a monotonous voice, or this is a monotonous class. It just goes on and on for hours. This is positive or negative. Yeah, this is negative. So monotonous means it's boring, it doesn't change, it just carries on the same. Right, let's look at one more. Prominent, positive or negative. Say he has a prominent position in the company. So this is positive. Prominent meaning important or very important. All right, so we can look at the words that they use, often adjectives, and these will tell us what the tone is. If most of the adjectives that he's using is positive, then he probably has a positive attitude. If most of the words that he's using are negative, it could be a negative attitude. Sometimes this asks about the story as a whole, but you may have to look at separate ideas and separate paragraphs as well to decide if the attitude is positive or if it's negative. Right, so let's have a look at a task that asks us to look at the writer's opinion. So we're going to be looking at a yes, no, not given task. Okay, so this is different from true, false, not given. Before we look at the task, let's just quickly read this article. Remember to have a look at the title, Living with Myers. So this is obviously an important name. You have to figure out who it is. It tells us in the subheading that it's an architect. And they're talking about a group of modernistic townhouses, and it gives us the name of the townhouses. It also tells us where it's happening, which is in the US. So straight away, we know that this is going to be mentioning an architect in the US who designed these group of modern townhouses, and they might be focusing on Lafayette Park. Okay, so we have an idea of what we're going to be reading. All right, so I'll give you 2 minutes. Please skim read just to find out the main ideas. What does he say about the townhouses? What do they say about the architect? You can start reading now. All right, so that's 2 minutes. Let's quickly have a look at some adjectives that may describe his attitude. Let's look at the word modernist. Do you think this is positive or negative? Have a look at the word that comes before it as well. Unique and modernist. Does this have a positive or a negative sound? Yeah, this is definitely positive, especially the word unique. And often if we think of something as modern, then it's positive. Let's go to this word, austere, and it's followed by the word uniformity. Does this sound positive or negative to you? Even if you don't know what the word austere means, what do you think of how it sounds? If something is uniform, it means that it's the opposite of unique, right? If it's all uniform, it means it's all the same. So often this has a negative sound. And austere is kind of strange. So austere uniformity or austere can be something as very strict or very regular. So it's not interesting or unique. And it's followed by this word over here, unappealing. Is this negative or positive? So this is as well, this is negative as well. So you can see here in this paragraph, whatever he's mentioning, he has a negative, there is a negative attitude towards it. Whereas in this sentence, there's a bit more of a positive attitude. Okay. So it may not be the attitude of everything as a whole, but of specific ideas. So let's have a look at the task. So for yes, no, not given tasks, you will be asked whether the statements in the question, so here we have 5 statements, match the views or claims of the writer. So if we say yes, it means it matches the claim, it agrees with the claims or views. If we say no, it means it contradicts or says the opposite of the views of the writer. And if it's not given, it means it's not possible to say whether it agrees or contradicts because the information is not there. Right, so for everyone, it asks us to see if it agrees or contradicts the views or claims. So a view is a personal opinion, and a claim, as I said before, is a statement made by the writer and presented as fact. It's not necessarily fact, it's just presented as fact by the writer. So let's have a look at these 2 sentences. I want you to write in the chat box, do you think this sentence is a view, personal opinion, or a claim, something that is presented as fact? Like hundreds of developments nationwide, they were the result of post-war urban renewal. So please type view or claim in the chat box. Does this sound like a personal opinion, or does it sound more like a fact? Yeah, this sounds like a claim to me. So they're presenting it as if it were a fact. What about sentence 3? Detroit has an abundance of beautiful housing options. Is this presented as a fact, or do you think it's a personal opinion? A view or a claim? Detroit has an abundance of beautiful housing options. Think about, does everyone think the same things are beautiful? No. So this is a view. Right. So the statements that you get here will either be claims, things that look like facts, or they'll be views, things that look like personal opinion. So then you need to decide whether it's yes, no, or not given. So there are similarities between true, false, not given, and yes, no, not given, but they're not the same. So the difference is that true, false, not given are based on factual information in the reading passage. So you have to say that, yes, it's a true fact, it's a false fact, or the fact is not given. But for yes, no, not given, the questions ask you to interpret, so to understand the views or claims of the writer. So here you have 5 views or claims of the writer. If it's yes, it means it agrees with the claims in the passage. No means it's the opposite of the views of the writer. and not given, it's impossible to say what the writer thinks. So let's do the task. All right, I'll make it as large as I can. All right, so you're going to read again. So first you'll have a look at the statement, find the key words. So era, meaning the year in which Lafayette Park was developed. That makes it special. So we're gonna scan for some kind of information about an era, a year, and then what it says about it being developed, or what it says makes it special. These questions are in the same order as the passage, which means you'll find the answer for number 1 in the beginning, the answer for number 5 at the end. Okay. So number 1 is likely to be in the first paragraph. All right, so there's 5 questions. I'll give you about 7 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes. So for each question, just write the number and then write yes, no, or not given. All right, when you're done, please type done in the chat box. I'll give you a little bit more time. All right, remember, don't spend too much time on one question. If it's too difficult, just skip it and move to the next one. All right, that's 10 minutes, so that's 2 minutes for every question. You should not be spending more than that, more time than that. Remember that you need to finish the whole test. So please, if something's difficult, just move on. You may find other questions easier in different parts of the test. So please stop now. Let's go through and check the answers together. So just type yes, no, not given in the chat box. So number 1. So what this question is asking is what year or period of time, is it the year or period of time that it was built that makes it special? So you should find your answer for this in the first paragraph. So please type yes, no, or not given in the chat box. What's your answer for number 1? So the answer here is no. The information here is the opposite to the information in the passage. Let's have a look at the passage. It says here, like hundreds of developments nationwide. So meaning the same as hundreds of developments nationwide, they were the result of the post-war urban renewal. So the era that they're talking about is the post-war era. So is this what makes Lafayette Park special? Is it special if it's like hundreds of others? Okay, so no, it's the opposite of this. The era that it was built in, the post-war era, is the same era that many other developments were built in. So this era is not what makes the park special. What makes it special is it says, unlike almost all of them, so not the same as, it had a trio of world-class designers behind it. So what made it special is that it had world-class designers, not that it was built in the post-war era. So this is a contradiction. Number 2. We have our keywords. We can scan, look for 1962. We find it here. So we know our answer must be here. And many people moved away from Detroit. So please type your answer in the chat box. Yes, no, not given. If you haven't found it, please read this paragraph. So does this agree? Yes, contradict, no, or it's not given. So the answer here is yes. So if we have a look at this paragraph, so it mentions 1962. So it said much of Detroit began a steep decline soon after. Okay, so since the beginning of 1962 and after that, it began to decline. And it says over here that Detroit has suffered an enormous population loss. Okay, so this soon after tells us that it's since 1962, and this tells us that people moved away. So remember, you need to look for synonyms. Have a look at number 3. So we know Mies is an architect. Did his designs influence other architects? What's your answer for number 3? So you should be looking for your answers somewhere over here. So it says here, created by a famous architect. So this is mentioning Mies. But it doesn't give any information about whether he influenced other people or not. So this answer is not given. Okay, there's no mention of whether he influenced other people. So we can't say what the writer thinks. He doesn't know if he influenced other people because it doesn't mention it. Let's move on to number 4. So the exterior, so this is what we need to look for. The exteriors of the buildings had a distinct style. So you should be looking for your answer over here. Distinct meaning unique, they're all different. So it looks like most of you have got the answer no, which is correct. And that's because it says they have a kind of austere uniformity. They're all the same when viewed from the outside, the exterior. All right, the last one, number 5. So this here is a view. Good architecture allows its occupants to reveal their identity. Yes, no, not given. So our answer is going to be somewhere here at the end. All right, looks like most of you have got it. Yes is correct, because it tells us here that the best designs, good architecture, doesn't force a personality. Instead, it helps them to bring out their own. All right, so well done. Looks like a lot of you did quite well. Just remember that this is not the same as true, false, not given, because here we're looking at the writer's claims and their views. All right, so we've run out of time. There's one more type of task that you can do for homework. So if you carry on with Unit 7, at the end of the worksheet, you have the summary completion task. So for summary completion, there are two different kinds of tasks. Right, you have a task with a box, which means you have a list of answers and you need to fill in the summary. Okay, this is quite similar to the listening task. This is a summary. You need to fill in the missing words. So sometimes you have a list of options, and sometimes you have no list of options. So you have a summary and you need to read and fill in the missing words. So here you have a word count. So only one word for each gap. So summary completion we have done before in listening. It's very similar, but if you want to practice this, then you can do it for homework. So you can try the summary completion with a box and the summary completion without a box. Okay, so you need to read the passage and complete the summary. So that you're going to have to do for homework because we've run out of time.